Welcome to the Pat White Show.
If you get an opportunity, I would appreciate you clicking on the like if you like it and subscribing if you want to, and apparently it'll help me out. Beyond that, hope you enjoy what I'm doing. Well, the much anticipated testimony of various people in various administrations involving the Jeffrey Epstein situation has begun. First person they called in to testify was a former head of the Justice Department. That would be Bill Barr. He was questioned for 4 hours by the committee, the House Oversight Committee. Chairman is Jim Comer of Kentucky. And he came out and said, look, what we learned was he answered all of our questions. He didn't duck a question. He answered every question. Now, the Democrats who were there, because this is a bilateral committee, Republicans and Democrats, and the Democrats are headed up by Jasmine Crockett, the Democrat from Texas, and Suraj Subramanian, a Democrat from Virginia. They said, well, we have more questions now than we had before. All right, that's fine. You got two sides both talking about what the testimony was. But here's an important part. Mr. Barr was asked, was President Trump involved with anything illegal involving Jeffrey Epstein in any way, shape, or form? And Mr. Barr said, no, he wasn't involved with anything. It wasn't any of his doing. Now, there were 4 hours of questions, and we do not know what the questions were. But we can only surmise they learned a little bit of stuff. Now, this is just the lowest level. They still have many, many more people to interview. They're going to have the FBI heads. They're going to have the Justice Department heads. And they're going clear up to Bill and Hillary Clinton themselves. Now, the word is the Clintons are going to fight the subpoena that they testified. This may be a little bit difficult getting out of it because the committee that issued the subpoenas for all the folks was a bilateral committee, which means there were both left and right Republicans and Democrats on the committee. So by issuing the subpoenas, essentially it indicates the committee members as a whole voted for the subpoena. Now, whether Bill and Hillary will be able to convince the courts not to honor the subpoena, well, that's something we're going to have to wait and see. But right now, what we know is this. Bill Barr is the first person they interviewed. It's what you call the low-hanging fruit. They've got a whole lot more people in various administrations, not just the Trump administration. They're going back to the Biden administration and back to even the Obama administration. And everybody is going to be asked questions. Now, what they learned from the earlier questions, they're going to ask in their follow-up questions down the road. Will somebody, eventually make a mistake, say something they shouldn't say or something they wish they hadn't said? Well, that's certainly a possibility. But right now, Bill Barr was deposed by the Oversight Committee for 4 hours. And according to Jim Comer from Kentucky, he said the president didn't do anything wrong in the Epstein case, is guilty of nothing. Now, will the left buy that? Probably not. They'll just say, no, we have more questions. Well, that's the way the game is played in Washington, D.C. So now we're going to move on. We've got more attorney generals and more heads of the FBI leading up to Bill and Hillary. And will they get out of the subpoena? Only time will tell. But eventually, someone may say something they regret, and it could blow the entire situation wide open. Only time will tell, and so will the interviews. Well, America, the collegiate football season, as well as the NFL, is about to get underway next week. And frankly, there's something going on that maybe you college football fans would like to know about. Well, you remember last year when the college football playoffs were expanded to 12 teams a year ago? Well, everybody said, well, that sounds pretty good. But consensus was that 16 teams would actually secure some additional spots for the Big Ten and the SEC. Well, here's a new plan that's coming out, compliments of the Big Ten. I want you to listen closely to this. The Big Ten is proposing, are you ready? 28 teams in the college football championship playoff. 28 teams, America. Now, 28 teams, well, that would include 7 spots for the SEC and Big Ten. They each get 7. 5 for the ACC and the Big 12. 2 for the group of 5, and 2 at-large spots. 28 teams. Frankly, to tell you the truth, what that would mean is the regular season would be, well, a non-player. Wouldn't mean anything. These big teams would just be into the playoffs, and the only time they would have to start playing really good football is when the playoffs start. That would also mean the end of the playoffs in the various conferences, whether it's Big Ten, SEC, whatever. And the first 2 games of the playoff system would be on your home field, depending on, where you are, who you are, and where you are in the draw. But is this a good idea? Think about it. If they would have done this last year, 28 teams like Syracuse, Louisville, Baylor, Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, LSU, and Army would have been eligible for the championship. Now, let's be honest. Those teams, do you think they were deserving of being in the NCAA championship? 28 teams? I don't know about you, but turning this entire thing into a tournament for the top 28 teams, sorry, that doesn't work. It was bad enough going to 12. When they had 4, you said, okay, then there was arguments about that, who didn't make it. Now they're 12. And now there's talk of going to 16 to make the numbers work out correctly. Well, to be honest with you, the football season starts in the end of August and now ends up somewhere in January, almost close to February. But do we want to go to a 28-team playoff? Ask yourself that. You think it'd be worth watching 28 teams? And I'll tell you something else coming up, folks. Pretty soon you're going to see all these major conferences go to streaming. They'll have their own streaming networks on the internet. And trust me, they will be charging you to see their games. So the days of seeing free football on ABC, NBC, CBS, TNT, whatever, those are quickly drawing to a close. Because very soon, everything will be available on the internet, and you will be paying for it. How much you're willing to pay and whom you're willing to pay to watch, that all depends upon, the networks they form. But get ready, folks. 28-team playoff, and everybody's going to their internet streaming conference. That's what's coming up. Now you understand what's happening in NCAA football, but remember, it's also going to the Pro Football Network as well. Everybody's going streaming because that's where the money is, and they're all going to do it. Well, let's all agree that the war in Ukraine is continuing to go on. It started, back a number of years ago when Barack Obama was president, and suddenly the Russians decided they wanted the Crimean Peninsula, and they took it. The Obama administration did absolutely nothing. And then when the Biden administration came in, Russia decided to, attack Ukraine, figuring in 2 weeks they could overwhelm the country and have it for their own. Now, why is Russia doing that? Well, because Ukraine is right next door to Mother Russia. And it's kind of interesting, parts of Ukraine and the parts of Russia. Let me explain that to you. If you were to go to the country of Ukraine right now, you go to Kyiv, their capital, they would speak Ukrainian. But if you head to the eastern side of the country, in the Donetsk and the Luhansk regions, these are like states, provinces, call them what you want. They speak Russian. So if you go to the eastern side of Ukraine, people there speak Russian, and they are Russian, and that's where their allegiance is. But in Ukraine, they speak Ukrainian. Now, Ukraine is a very, very corrupt country. It's a lot of bad stuff going on. The money going into Ukraine has been funneled off and put in a lot of different places. And frankly, it's not necessarily going to fight the war. It's been funneled off, and people are making money off this thing hands down. Countries are putting money into Ukraine. The United States is putting money into Ukraine. And here we are, 3 years in, 3.5 years in, war's still on. Now, President Trump hates war. That's proven that. He's trying to get this thing taken care of, down, and get it put to bed, as they say. So he meets with Putin in Alaska, and a lot of people putting him down, saying, "Oh, how dare he? He was fooled. He was played like a cheap suit." Trouble is, you got to meet with somebody somewhere. You got to do what you got to do to talk to him. So he got Putin to come to Anchorage, Alaska. Fine. And then the next week, what did he do? He had a whole bunch of people from Europe, 8 folks, 8 different areas, countries, even the head of NATO showed up. And take a look at this. If you remember Trump 45, take a look at the way the foreign leaders treated him back when he was president, back in the first term. Take a look at how they treated him. Now, as he's 47, take a look at how they're treating him. 2 totally different aspects, 2 totally different concepts. Because you see, now he's in control. Now he's saying, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, whether you like it or not. And they're listening to him because he has the money, the power. So he's trying to negotiate something. He has Zelensky come in. And the truth of the matter is, Zelensky actually dressed up halfway decent this time. Maybe they're trying to get something done. And I'm going to tell you, here's how it's probably going to end up. Zelensky's not going to like this, but he's probably going to have to give up the Donetsk and the Luhansk territories. Those are Russian anyway. Those people in there speak Russian. They don't speak Ukrainian. So he may have to get those up because currently the Russians occupy that area. Now, the other thing, Ukraine is not going to go into NATO. Ain't going to happen, folks. Don't see it. But Trump has said, okay, you people in Europe, it's your responsibility. You put your troops in there. You keep everything at bay without him being without Ukraine being in NATO. I think that's the way this is going to end up. So all those people in the Europe area, they're bleeding money, folks. They've been putting money into this thing for years, and they don't have the money. They got to get this thing settled once and for all with all the corruption. Because remember, Burisma, Hunter Biden, all the money he was paid, that country's as corrupt as it gets. That money going in is going all different places, not the war. Now, 7,000 people, they say, are being killed every week. It's turned out to be a war of drones and missiles. That's what it is. Are we giving all of our ammunition and stuff into the Ukraine? Well, most of it, yes. Do we have plenty in case we get ourselves in a cha-cha with somebody else? Maybe not. What I'm basically telling you is the way this is going to end up is eventually there's going to be part of Ukraine they're going to have to give up and let the Russians have it because, frankly, the people there are Russians. That's how they are. You go to the country, they speak Russian. They don't speak Ukrainian. So let Ukraine be Ukraine and let the people in Europe, well, do their job of protecting it. It's not going to be NATO, folks. Russia don't want that. That may be the only hope to get this thing solved and get things back to normal. That's what needs to be done. Trump's getting it done, whether you like it or not. He's an anti-war president. Flat out, simple. Take a look at all the stuff he's done in the past. He wants this stuff over, done, and finished. He'll get it done. It's going to take time. And anybody who remembers what happened in Vietnam in the 1970s, look how long it took Kissinger to get the United States and North Vietnam talking. It took years. You can't do things in a minute, folks. It don't work that way. And ask the folks in Korea how long it took to get the Korean War settled. It took a long time. These things take time, folks. You can't do them in a day. Russia wanted Ukraine in 2 weeks. They didn't get it. So now they're going to have to settle. A lot of people have died, and it's time to get this mess done, over with, and get our money back into the United States and get the military-industrial complex out of Ukraine. Because right now, that's where it is, and they're taking our money. Just so you understand, that's what's going on, folks. Now you know. Well, if you're a fan of Major League Baseball, and many of you are, The history of baseball goes back many, many years. The National League was formed back in 1876. The American League was formed back in 1901. So you have the American and the National, they play each other in the World Series, right? Well, the commissioner of baseball, a gentleman by the name of Rob Manfred, he has a vision, and he wants to see about possibly doing something that, well, might destroy the concept of the American and the National Leagues. Allow me to explain. It seems that he was speaking at the Little League World Series, which is going on in Pennsylvania right now. The best kids playing the best kids. And while he was chatting, he said, what I want to do before I retire is bring in two more teams. Wants to bring in Nashville and Salt Lake City. Now, the big realignment was started back in 2023 when a former GM by the name of Jim Bowden, name you may remember, he came up with an idea how to divide baseball, creating 4 teams in a division. Yeah, I know it sounds weird. 4 teams in a division and 16 teams in a conference. So you'd end up having 2 conferences, a West Conference and an East Conference. It used to be National American. You have a West Conference, East Conference. And then all the teams within those conferences compete against each other to see who plays in the World Series. That way you've got one coming from the East Coast and you got another coming from the West Coast. Who does that help? TV. That's exactly what it helps. TV gets the real benefit of all this entire thing. So how would that divide itself up? Well, let's talk about that. The Eastern Conference would consist of the Eastern Division. Now, that would be Boston, the New York Mets, and the New York Yankees, and the Philadelphia Phillies. 4 teams, that particular division. Then the North Division would be the Cincinnati Reds, the Cleveland Guardians, I want to say the Indians, but it can. Detroit Tigers and the Toronto Blue Jays. They're fighting in their division. The Mid-Atlantic Division would have the Baltimore Orioles, the expansion team, which I believe is Nashville, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Washington Nationals. And then finally, the 4th group out of that, Southeast Division, would have the Atlanta Braves, the Miami Marlins, expansion, and the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, that's going to create a problem, so you don't know where the expansion team is going to be, but that's kind of what's going on. So you get 16 teams in the East competing against the other 16 teams in the West. Now, the Western Conference would consist of the Midwest Division, which is the Cubs, the White Sox, the Brewers, and the Minnesota Twins. Then the Southwestern Division's got the Astros, the Royals, St. Louis Cardinals, and the Texas Rangers. Pacific Coast Division got the Rockies, the Athletics, the Mariners, and the San Francisco Giants. And finally, the West Division, you got the D-backs, the Angels, the Dodgers, and the San Diego Padres. That makes up the West. And now you see what's going on. So you have 2 divisions, the East Division, or the East Conference, the West Conference. Not American or National, you just have 2 conferences. And whoever wins on one side, whoever wins on the other side, they play in the World Series. That's kind of what they're talking about, folks. So you understand what could be happening. Now, on the bright side, and I want to mention this, also at the World Series game, Mr. Rob Manfred said in 2027, the Chicago Cubs will be hosting the All-Star game. Now, I realize some of you are going, really? The Cubs All-Star game? Yep. Well-deserved, folks. And the owner of the Cubs is doing a multi-million-dollar redesign, redo, fix-up, call it what you will, of Wrigley Field. So the good news is the Cubs are going to get an all-star game in 2027. The bad news is the American League and the National League could be disappearing when you have 2 conferences, the West and the East. And that's what will happen to baseball. That's if the commissioner gets his way before he retires in 2029. Will he? Only time will tell. Having the internet is a wonderful thing in today's world. Almost everybody is saying, boy, it's cool. We get to do cool stuff, see cool stuff. And frankly, we also get to say some stuff that may not be cool. Here's an example. Natalie Rose Jones, she's a 50-year-old woman who lives in Lafayette, Indiana. She decided to utilize her Instagram account to basically say that she was going to kill the president. Now, I realize that not everybody likes this president. Not everybody liked the previous president or president before that. I understand that. But when you go online and you start making threats, very serious threats, to kill someone, and you do it repeatedly, the chances are pretty good you're going to have a knock at your door, and it's going to be someone with a badge and a gun. In Natalie Rose Jones' case, that's exactly what happened to her. You see, the Justice Department sent folks over to have a little chat with her. And when they did, well, she was charged with the pretty swift and unwavering policies, according to Judge Janine Pirot. She said, we're not going to put up with that. You're going to get charged with threatening to kill somebody. That will get you in trouble. Now, when she was contacted by the feds, she denied everything. But they brought multiple sources of proof. Here's your account. Here's what you said on these various days. Here's what you did. You went to Washington, D.C. and even participated in an anti-Trump march. You were pretty serious about hating the president. And that's your right to do. If you want to do that, that's everybody's right. But when you start making threats to say that you are going to kill someone and this is what you plan to do and how you plan to do it, that, my friend, is going to get you in trouble. And in this case, Ms. Natalie Jones, age 50 of Lafayette, Indiana, has now found herself in a boatload of trouble. She has been charged with intimidations and threatening the life of the President of the United States. Like I said, probably not the smartest thing you could do. And it's a reminder to anybody else out there. I don't care who you are, what party you're in, who is president. When you start making those kind of threats over the internet, don't think that people aren't watching and looking. Don't think that there aren't people in the Justice Department and the FBI who are paying attention to what people are writing. And believe it or not, Ms. Natalie Jones found out the hard way when the police were knocking at her door and she was charged with a threat on killing the president. My recommendation, you may not like someone, don't put it online because it will come back to bite you. And in this case, it certainly did. If you're a fan of the WNBA, let me fill you in on what's going on, and some of it may not make you happy. It seems that the Indianapolis Fever, the Indy Fever, whatever you want to call them, they won a game today. That's great. They've got about 4 more games left of the entire season. But here's something you should know. In the WNBA, only the top 8 teams make the playoffs. And currently, the Fever are in 7th place. You heard me right, 7th place. And what happens with the other teams playing their games and the Fever playing the remaining games that they have could determine whether the Fever make it into or out of the playoffs. Like I said, they're in 7th place. And if they drop below 8th place, and based on what's happened, because in the game today against the Sun, Sophie Cunningham was hurt. Knee injury. I don't know how bad it is. Don't know if she'll be back. But you get all these players hurt. You've got Caitlin Clark out. You've got a couple other guards out with additional injuries. And if Sophie Cunningham is out, you're running out of players. And you're not going to have a good chance with the remaining games you have left. Plus, the other teams also have their games left, which could drastically change the standings in the WNBA. All right, that's what's going on there. So could they maybe not make it into the playoffs? The answer is yes. But it may not matter because right now the WNBA players, the ladies, have said the latest offer from the WNBA management is a, quote, slap in the face. You know, currently the players are making about $66,000 to about $250,000. If you're a rookie coming in, you're making about $66,000. You can make about $250,000 if you're a high-end star. Well, the league came down and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to offer you 250,000 up to $1 million. So you're going from 64K, 250K, that range, to 250,000 to $1 million. And the women said it's a slap in the face and they don't want it because what they want is a share of the revenue like the NBA has and the NFL has and American baseball has. Because currently they're only getting about 9.3% of the revenue, but the other big-time teams in the NBA, they're getting like 48 to 50% of the revenue. They want their cut. Well, here's the problem. You lose somebody like Caitlin Clark, and all those fancy ratings you're getting, and all those fancy people showing up to your games, they're going to lose interest. Because every time a game showed on and she's not in, the ratings drop. Whether you like it or not, or anybody likes it or not, Caitlin Clark turned the league into something because before she showed up, the league was nothing. You guys know it. The public knows it. And frankly, if you want to kill the golden goose, you're well on the way to doing that. If she's gone, the league will probably turn into a shriveled up prune, and that ain't good. So to say you're going to be demanding higher salaries and 50% of the revenues because a deal was cut with the TV networks for $2.4 billion, you want your cut of the deal. It may not work out well, folks, because if you don't have good teams, it's something that people want to watch. And if people don't want to watch because they don't like the players, they aren't going to watch. No ratings. Advertisers will disappear, and the leagues and the TV networks are going to say, we made a big, giant 5-year mistake. So that's what's going on, folks. You could see a strike by the ladies, but you could see a lockout by the league. Either way, things aren't looking good for either the league or potentially the Indy Fever, who right now are on the cusp of not being in the playoffs. Something you need to know because it ain't getting better. Folks, it may be getting very much worse. How many stories have you seen in recent days, months, well, even longer than months, of restaurants being forced to say that they can't allow young people? Now, I'm not just saying young people, I'm saying people under the age of 18. That's right. Restaurants are now starting to ban people under the age of 18 unless they're accompanied by an adult or a guardian. Why? Because they're disrespectful. I don't know why we're doing this nowadays, but the problem is the kids today, many of these kids today, are showing absolute disrespect for any place, business, or some place that's operating simply because, well, this is what they want to do. Turns out a Chick-Fil-A in Kettering, Ohio, which isn't too far from here, put out a message that says to ensure a safe and respectful environment for all of our guests, anyone under the age of 17 or under must be accompanied by a parent, guardian, or adult chaperone 21 or over to dine in, and that unaccompanied minors will be asked to leave. Now you'd say, well, that's a pretty harsh policy. Tell the kids under the age of 18 that they got to be accompanied by an adult or else they have to leave. Why are these restaurants doing it? Because the kids today have become unruly. You know, I know that in Indianapolis, they had a Circle Center Mall downtown, and that place was overrun with young children. Parents were actually dropping off their kids at this mall, whatever time of the evening they dropped them off, and the kids would run wild in the mall at night. The parents would pick them up later on that night. Sort of a way of babysitting, I guess, for their kids at a mall. It got so bad, the mall started literally banning these kids from attending inside the mall. It's happening across America. It isn't just in Kettering, Ohio. It's all over the United States. Unfortunately, many kids, and this is really unfortunate to say this, many young children do not have discipline. Now you're saying, why don't they have it? because they weren't taught by their parents discipline. And frankly, if you're not taught discipline by your parents, what are you going to get? You're going to get undisciplined kids. And now restaurants like this Chick-Fil-A in Kettering, Ohio, are having to say, "Hey, we're not going to allow kids under the age of 18 in our restaurant unless they're accompanied by an adult or a guardian." Now, is that going to change things? Sadly, no, because some adults out there don't understand what's going on with the kids either. They're just saying, "Well, they're just children. They're doing what they do." No, they don't. That's the problem, America. We've lost control of our children because we're not raising them, well, like we were raised. Now, people say, "Well, that was the old school. That's back in the old days. Things are different." No, respect, honor, integrity, and being a proper individual, those things never go away. And yet now we're seeing businesses having to say, "We don't want kids in our place under the age of 18. And if you show up without an adult, you're asked to leave." That, my friends, is a sad commentary on the state of our affairs today, but it's happening. Hopefully it isn't happening in your town, but I'll tell you what, in many towns, that's exactly what's happening. And until the adults start being adults and parents rather than best friends to their kids, the problems are going to keep on happening. Well, if you will indulge me to take you back into my teenage years in the 1960s, I became hooked on a writer, a fiction writer. His name was Ian Fleming. Now, Ian Fleming started to write his novels clear back in 1953. They were spy novels featuring a character by the name of James Bond. That's right. Ian Fleming wrote the James Bond novels, and I started reading them back in 1960, 61, 62, somewhere in there. And then, well, ultimately waiting for a movie to come out. But it turns out they actually made a James Bond movie in 1954, and it was called Casino Royale. It starred a guy by the name of Barry Nelson, an American, playing an English spy. Didn't work, frankly. But back in 1962, the first James Bond movie came out, Dr. No, starring none other than Sean Connery. Sean Connery, in my mind, was James Bond. He was special. He was unique. He was a man's man. Went after the ladies, ruthless, kill people. That's what a 007 does. He got the right to do that. Well, James Bond, Sean Connery, did the movies from 1962 to 1983. He did 7 films. They weren't all together. He stopped a couple of times and came in and did another movie and did another movie. Ultimately did 7 films. He was replaced back the next year, 1960, I believe it was 67, by a guy named David Niven. David Niven's a great actor, but it was a spoof movie. It had Woody Allen in it. It was just one movie. Didn't work. It was called Casino Royale, the original one. And then they tried another actor, George Lazenby. He did one movie back in 1969. That one didn't work either. I'm sorry, it wasn't James Bond. Lazenby didn't work. But ultimately, back in 1973, they did find somebody that was pretty good Bond, entertaining, had a sense of humor. And he was a 007. But he was also from a TV show called The Saint. You may have seen it back in the old days. Roger Moore. Roger Moore was he was a James Bond. He did pretty good. He did 7 films from 73 to 85. Like I said, he came from the TV show The Saint. That's where they got him from, because he fit the spy concept. Those are pretty entertaining movies, some very action-filled movies, and rather amusing. So then you had Roger Moore. Then Roger Moore said, I'm giving it up. Then they went to a guy named Timothy Dalton. And he did 2 movies, and I'm sorry, I wasn't thrilled by them. They didn't do anything for me. Didn't enjoy them. And I'm thinking, man, what's happened to the James Bond? It's not the James Bond I knew. I mean, I've been through Sean Connery, been through Roger Moore, but Timothy Dalton didn't work for me. Then they came up with a good James Bond, a very good James Bond. He was also from TV as well. Played in a series called Remington Steele. And he was very suave, sophisticated. Remington Steele became James Bond back in 1995. He did a total of 4 movies. And GoldenEye, which is the one I happen to like the best. I thought that was great. But he also had a new character that came in, his boss, Dame Judi Dench. She was fabulous. Great actress in that kind of movie. Normally you think she would play that part, but she played it extremely well. It was a very entertaining series of movies. The Cubby Broccoli people really knew how to make a good James Bond. Well, Pierce Brosnan was the last one until, back in 2006, they came out with Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig was deep, dark. He was just, I don't know. I'm not sure what you say, but he was a James Bond, all right. But he was kind of, he wasn't funny. Let's be honest. He didn't have a sense of humor. He was all very serious, and that's probably what a secret agent should be. So Daniel Craig did the movies until 2020. All right, which brings us to today. Now they're deciding who is going to be the next James Bond. Is Daniel Craig going to come back? I don't think so. So now what they're saying is, well, maybe we need a woman. Sorry, folks. You don't go woke with James Bond. You do, you're going to go broke. Just saying. It isn't going to work. You got to find the right character, the right person who can do it. I mean, you would say, well, what about a Tom Selleck? Well, obviously he's too old to do it now. But someone, the right person who could be a James Bond, and but not a woman. Sorry, that's not going to work. Now, you can decide to do whatever you want to spend on the money and put your dollars in the movie, whatever you should decide to do, you folks out there doing the movie. But I'm going to tell you this. As a James Bond fan, and one who's been a James Bond fan since the 1960s, you make a woman out of James Bond, sorry, you ain't getting my $13 ticket price.